individually. So just to share this reflection with you. And now my role, that is introducing our next paper, that it's entitled Understanding Contemporary Family Support, Reflections on Theoretical and Conceptual Frameworks. And the reason I am introducing instead of David is because David is one of the authors that is going to be presenting. So you have there Professor Niamh Frost, already introduced by David as an emeritus professor at Leeds Beckett University and a founder member of this network. Also David Herrera, I thanked before, but I didn't introduce. He's a senior researcher and lecturer at the University of Granada in Spain. He is expert on childhood and youth at risk, minorities, unaccompanied foreign minors, youth offenders, etc. from the last 15 years. And he has been involved in this network also from the beginning. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to present the first few slides, and then I will hand over to David after slide 7. So thank you, Lucia, for presenting, introducing the paper so well. It was also written by Carmel, our colleague in Galway. So the three of us worked on it. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a paper that really developed the ideas that were in the original foundation document. So we wanted to dig down deeper on the ideas we had there. They were initial ideas, and we wondered what was the theory, what was the research underpinning that. So we hope that this paper takes us a step on from the foundation document. Next slide, please. Again, we want to relate to all the different professions, all the different disciplines, and I'm very committed to the idea that because families are whole units, we need a holistic approach that takes in all the different contributions of the professions. And here later on, we're going to look at the issue that Lucia mentioned, psychosocial approaches and also structural approaches. But we also believe it's important to reflect on values and on ethics. So we're not doing this just for our careers, just because we like networking. There's an ethical commitment, which Andy Lloyd spoke about earlier, to improving life for children and families. Next slide, please. So we want to look at that transdisciplinary process, focusing on the social structural, which is what David will speak about later, but initially looking at the idea that Lucia mentioned, the psychosocial, because I think all three of us are committed to the social structural theory, but that doesn't always help the practitioners that we've mentioned today, that as we're speaking will be working with families. So we felt the psychosocial theory helped them deal with issues such as domestic abuse, substance abuse, and family conflicts, the issues that they will be addressing every day in their work. Next slide, please. So working collaboratively is the key here. And the family can be viewed as either an object of practice or a partner for change. And we're very much committed to the restorative approach, the partnership approach, the participatory approach, sometimes called co-production, so that the practitioners are working every day with families rather than imposing their ideas or their approaches on the family. So we use this concept of partnership and co-production. Next slide, please. Part of that is a focus on strengths, and it's already been mentioned a few times today, that families just don't have problems, they just don't have challenges, they have strengths. And the aim of the network, the aim of the discussion today is to work with those strengths, to build on the competencies, to support families to make their own decisions, and enhance the resilience and the cultural strengths, the diversity that family has. So how can we build on those strengths rather than just seeing families as a problem or as a deficit? So that's called the strengths-based approach. And my final slide before I hand over to David. We believe one way of doing that is through relationship-based practice. So can we build strong, consistent relationships between the professional and the volunteer and the families that we're working with? So that relationship, we believe, is key. It's sometimes challenged. If I can speak to my own profession of social work here in the UK, that used to be the core of social work, but now is very difficult because there is a change of social worker, a big focus on technology. There may be short-term teams and long-term teams. So the relationship building is much harder than perhaps it was in the past. So we wanted to re-emphasize the relationship between the practitioner and the family. I'm handing over now to David.
Hello, thanks, Nick. I'm going to be very quick, as I know we're short of time. But basically, I'm going to talk to you about social structured models. We know that the environment make a big influence on families. So that's why we do believe family support need to help families facing environmental difficulties. This is something that Andy Lloyd mentioned at the beginning as well, because we want to prevent and look after their well-being, because otherwise the well-being and the parental parenting will be limited. So from that resilient and critical approach, I think we have to work on modifying circumstances, structures, and systems. There is a theory that we use on a paper called the theory of the human needs, that we use the pyramid by Maslow. Which is this. Basically, well, this theory is being reviewed, and there are some critics about that, but it gives an idea about the different layers that are, because we all the humans, we have different needs, and the basic ones, this pyramid is divided in two levels. Top level, which are the self-realization and esteem, and the basic ones. If we are able to create a society where the three bottom ones are covered, we probably will increase the standards of the well-being for the families. So that's what we do believe. So sorry, that's why we do believe in an inclusive and integrated model. That must be a holistic, ecological, and comprehensive approach, because families are surrounded by many realities: economy, employment, education, health, society, and many others. So that's why we do believe that networking should be the work philosophy, transdisciplinarity, partnership, and coordination between all those areas. And also, as we say in the first session, practice, research, and policy have to work together in a synergetic process. We had a few conclusions, but basically all of this wants to inform the European policies and the practice orientation. Critically, it highlights the value of family support across in a variety of contexts, with a focus on potential outcomes, and family support has an added value which ultimately impacts on those who need it most. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick and Frost, for that stimulating presentation. And I now will give the floor or the screen to Caroline Vink. She is a senior advisor at the Netherlands Youth Institute, which is a public knowledge institute that provides knowledge and evidence from research, practice, and children, young people, and families themselves. Caroline is working on the transformation of child and family services and strengthening the outcomes for children through enhancing the support for parents and other caretakers. She is also responsible for the International Knowledge Program at the Institute. So Caroline, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucia. And I understood that my presentation will be started, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah,
Scanning,
really
1
great.
second.
Thank you very much. Well, while you're started, first of all, I would like to say hello to everyone. It's wonderful, at least, that these are the ways that we can meet and we can share. And I hope it's going to stay with us, but I hope that we also will have the opportunity to see each other in real, because I think this screen never replaces human contact and relationships. And thank you very much, Nigel and David, and your colleague Carmel for the paper, and David and Nigel for the presentations. I'm just going to limit my comments to the next slide. I have tried to put them on the next slide. So you can put the next slide on.
Can you say it now?
Yes, now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it going to happen, or otherwise I will already?
Caroline is asking for the second one.
Yeah, the second one.
The,
please just put the next slide on. Yeah.
This is the one, I think.
No, the next one, the second one. I can't see it. Maybe you can already see it or not.
Yeah, it's the second one. It's the one you want.
Okay.
Putting parents at the heart of bridging community.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's not on my screen, so I don't know if
we cannot see it, David.
No,
I think
David,
we're
it's not. It's on the first. It's on the first. You just need to open the second one.
You have not habilitated the edition, and maybe if you use the full mode, full screen mode.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can try and share my screen because I got it open. And there's always this moment, huh? I think in the. Okay,
yeah,
here
it's
it is.
there now.
Yes, here it is. Yes. Well, first of all, I really applaud your attempt to put a conceptual framework under the work that we are trying to do in this network. Because I think we are all quite aware that there has been a lot of theoretical frameworks behind the interventions that are taking place in family and parenting support. But an overall view, I think, is lacking. And in that sense, I also am really, really happy that you are trying to reconciliate the more, like, let's say, social and ecological view on the work of that's being done within family support, with the more individual and psychosocial issues about what it means of what parents and children need in order to be able to raise their children to being fulfilling adults. And in that sense, I think you also have been very modest in just calling it reflections, but I think it is interesting what we're going to see, what in general this theoretical framework will build as a foundation to the work that we are doing, because I think that is also something you're introducing in the paper, that we need a foundation and also a much more knowledge foundation to what is being done. And also why I think it is quite brave what we're doing with putting such a theoretical foundation to the work, because in the end what we're talking about is that it is interfering, and interfering doesn't sound very positive, but I cannot find another word in the language, but in basically probably what is the most unique relationship that there is, that between parents and children. And in that sense, I also would like to refer to what some other speakers have said, that we need to do that not by looking at the deficits, but looking at the strengths and the possibilities that exist in that. So having said that, I would like to address two additional points. One actually is very much also already in the paper, and the other one I think I would like to finish with, because I think it is something that we could probably spend a little bit more time on. But the first point, the additional point I would like to address, is what you also mentioned in the paper, the absolute necessity for partnership and co-production. And here I actually would like to refer to a conference that we organized 8 years ago, which was the first European conference on parenting support, where the title of the conference was Think Parents, putting parents at the heart of parenting support. And maybe we could elaborate on that for our network in Eurofam, and saying, think parents and children, and putting parents and children at the heart of family support. Because I think in what you're writing in the paper, it is starting with that knowledge that we need to organize that partnership. But what we often still do in the practice and in the way that we go forward in the work is that parents and children are still at the receiving end, and of course they will be heard in the decision making, but they're often not always at the heart of that decision making. And I think it's their needs that we should put at the center. And I think what we contribute with our theoretical framework should also be directed at that. So maybe putting children and parents at the heart of family support could be an underlying slogan for the work that we will do in the next few years. And that brings me to the second point, and that is that we will really need to address the bridging of formal and informal communities and practice, because I think what we see is an continuing professionalization of family and parenting support, which is good because it also brings the knowledge and it brings the expertise from practice into that knowledge of what actually works and what is effective. But I think what we should realize, and I think COVID-19 has brought us so much to the center, is that social networks around parents is actually what is essential. The professional practice comes and goes. And in that sense, we really need to link those two. And I think we could spend, with all that knowledge that we have around in our network, quite a bit of time of actually see what is effective in bridging those formal and informal practices, and what can strengthen them, and what can in the end then help parents and children most effectively. So those are actually the 2 points that I hope that we can elaborate in this more conceptual framework that we will need as an underlying concept between the work that we all do. And I hope then maybe in a year's time, we actually can work towards a conceptual framework and we don't just need to call it reflections anymore. So again, thank you very much, Nigel, David and Carmel, for making this start. And from our experiences in the Netherlands and also specifically in this Corona year, we would really be happy to contribute to that.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for these interesting contributions to the paper and also with this empowering framework. And now I will give the floor. Well, let me first say the presentation, the respondent we have now is from UNICEF. You have on the flyer planned to be Vesna Jovanovic, but because of an unexpected situation, she prevented from participating in the seminar. So we are lucky to have Mila Vukovic instead. She is an early childhood development officer from UNICEF in Serbia. Thank you, Mila, for your quick reaction to be here. Yeah. She's engaged in strengthening intersectoral, transparent, accessible systems of support for children and parents and caregivers across health, education, and social protection systems driven by children's rights. Mila is graduated in social work and social policy and also a systemic family psychotherapist. So thank you, Mila. The screen is yours.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of UNICEF office in Serbia as a respondent in the following 5 minutes, as I understand. It is a privilege and first gratitude goes to authors. It is a very inspiring article and presentation and so promising for future developments in the field of the family support. And my first thought was that throughout this process, we are on the track on construct highly needed, coherent, congruent and common narrative of the family support. Of the family support approach, which really have potential to go beyond one service, one sector, or one professional identity. And this initiative, for me, my impression is that this initiative really have a potential to overcome the gap and become a strong advocacy tool with academic community standing behind. Supporting this paradigm shift, which will really could start to reflect in a country level policies, professional standards, monitoring tools and practices. And I want to highlight just a couple of key messages within presenting ideas, which present a real quality changer, or should I say game changer in this field. First message, that all disciplines who work with the children, regardless of the remit of their services, their specific role or their original training, could and actually should incorporate family support service into their practice. This is a really innovative perspective and really gives the wind at our back to really be open to find all entry points from the families in which they connect with the different range of practitioners, services, or sectors. And then the family support is actually transdisciplinary sphere of intervention. And my favorite, since my background is early childhood development and early childhood intervention, is that we should start early, in the meaning that this article and this material presented really recognize the potential of early age as a window of opportunity. Early age is a really time when the child is the most sensitive to positive on the one side, but also adverse environmental influences on the other side. And the material go beyond that and also support and also emphasize that support for families needs to go across lifespan and be very flexible, flexible enough to recognize risks and response in a timely manner. And in the end, this quality level, which reflected in this strength-based perspective and relationship-based practice, and this is my favorable, since in our programs we very often try to emphasize and advocate for that since parenting isn't about only like teaching or education, rather it is about of connection and relationship, child-parent interaction and connection and relationship. In the same way, support and services also need to be based on connection and relationship. And for some families in a real vulnerable and fragile situation, this could be a unique, different, hopefully formative experience. And definitely this require competencies, which includes a shift in beliefs, in knowledge, in behavior. But I agree with the previous respondent, not necessarily expert knowledge. It is a different kind of level when we speak about competencies here, and could include informal and formal network of support as well, and could value this different kind of support that could come from different sources. So just for the end, one like small advices from the position of someone who being engaged in the system, strengthening activities to support system to implement parenting intervention on the scale. I could say that at the same time, this above mentioned area is in the same time the area of the most persistent challenges and bottlenecks in the system, as that it is in this moment. So I think that this clear conceptualization could benefit of be united with the implementation science as well, in terms of the knowledge of how change emerge in the system, and hand in hand can offer pathways for a sustainable practice change in a time ahead of us. And just to conclude, this webinar and this group of people so strongly gathered around this idea of building an evidence-based case around family support in a Europe level is really encouraging, and one more time, a gratitude that UNICEF can be a part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mila, for pointing out those interesting questions to the debate. And John, it's time for the audience comments.
Yeah, so just to give some positive feedback again to Caroline, you could become a copywriter for an advertising agency, I think, Caroline. People are really liking putting parents and children at the heart of family support, so thank you for that. It's something we might take forward. I'm not seeing a huge number of comments here, but I do have a few for myself, and I think this is one of the interesting things for me in this, is to pick up on this idea of people who work from different disciplines and come from different professions. We know that this is a very difficult thing to achieve. We know that interagency working there's much written about it, and I know, Nick, you've written extensively about this. But what do we need to do? Is there something about people having to give something up? If they want to do family support, does that mean they have to be willing to give up some space? And maybe could I direct that to Nick in the first instance?
Yes, John, as you say, I'm very committed to multi-agency working. I've written about that and worked in those settings. The initiative we had in the UK that I think worked very well, but then the current government have removed that initiative, was called Every Child Matters. And what that initiative did, it had 5 aims. So they were around education, health, children being happy, children being fulfilled, children not living in poverty. And at the time, this was around about 2005 to 2010, every profession knew they were called the 5 outcomes, and they could speak to them, and you could talk as a social worker to a teacher, as a teacher to a psychologist, and everyone knew those outcomes. But the current government removed them. So I thought having a common language and 5 shared goals, it may be a different number, but here we have 5, really helped multidisciplinary working.
Thank you, Nick. And a question or a point for Mila from Francis Chance, asking about the idea of having core family support training modules for everyone who will go on to provide family support in families, so that we have this common shared language and so on. Mila, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, well, sounds like a great idea. And some of the processes in our country already started in that way. We are inspired with some of the training package come from South Africa, Wits University and Harvard University as well. For example, caring for the caregivers, which really succeed to capture this aspect that Lucy, I think, emphasized earlier about well-being of parents and about how this practice of self-care, these stress coping strategies and engaging families and communities and these skills to problem and conflict solving resolution skills can really increase the capacity of the parents, and this core concept need to find their place in this this basic training package that should be common for everybody interact with the parents in the different points, in the different settings and different environments. What is really inspiring in these training packages is that they're really simple and really practical. Like there is a very profound philosophical wisdom behind very practical and like easy skills to apply in a context with families. So yeah, I agree. This should be a future streamlining pathway in this process.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, and I can't let the thing go without saying that in our university at NUI Galway, we established the first Masters in Family Support and on an interdisciplinary basis back in the early 2000s, and Pat led that and created it, and it has been, I suppose, part of our vision to combine the development of the theoretical side along with the practice side and the policy side through that program but it is something that I think would be interesting to evolve, perhaps not at master's level, perhaps you know, more standalone modules and things like that. But it is, again, something for the action to begin to think about, and some of the products of the action will actually translate into training materials as well. Just to highlight again the importance of early years from Agatha from Eurochild, again, just to say that. So again, this emphasis on transdisciplinary approach coming in the chat.